We work so you can play.
Now that that is all complete, we have to see who won the combat. Now you might think, well, obviously the Dark Elves did because they killed more. But there's more to it than that, because obviously if you have 50 guys coming up against 2, then those 2 might be able to kill more than they lost, but there's still other bonuses that the 50 have. For one thing, there being 50 of them. So the way we do this is we call it combat resolution. We need to add up how many points each side got. And the way that you start it, the very first thing that you do, very simply, is you look at how many guys were killed. So the Dark Elves killed 6, so they have 6 points for their combat resolution. The Tomb Kings killed 3, so they have 3 points for their combat resolution. So right now, the Dark Elves are winning by 3. However, there's other things to consider. For one thing, the banner adds +1. Now both sides have a banner, so in this case it's not going to make much of a difference. So now it's 7 for the Dark Elves because they have a banner, and 4 for the Tomb Kings because they have a banner. The next thing to consider is who charged. If you charge this round, you get a +1 to combat resolution. So since the Dark Elves charged, they get another +1. So they're now at 8 versus 4. Lastly, you can look at how many ranks deep the sides had, and if they have extra ranks, they're going to get extra points. Now, in order to get a rank bonus, you have to have extra ranks that have at least 5 guys in them. So the Tomb Kings have 1 extra rank with 5 guys, so they're going to get a +1 to their score. The Dark Elves do not. They only have their first rank. And so that gives +1 to the Tomb Kings for a total of 5 points, because they have 3 for what they killed, 1 for the standard bearer, and 1 for the extra rank. That gives them 5. And the Dark Elves have 6 for what they killed, 1 for the standard bearer, and 1 for the charge, giving them 8 in total. So the final score is 8 to 5. Now, because the Tomb Kings lost, we look at how much they lost by, and normally they would have to make what's called a leadership test to see if they're going to break from this combat. And the way that you do that is you take how much they lost by, in this case 3, 8 minus 5 is 3, and you subtract that from their leadership score, and then you have to roll 2 dice, and you have to get equal to or lower than what your final number is. So if a unit's leadership is 7, then if they lost by 3, they would have to roll 4 or less on 2 dice. So you can see it'd be very difficult to not run away when you lose by that much. However, the Tomb Kings are what's called immune to psychology. They actually ignore it because they're just either too stupid or just, they're skeletons. They don't care if they've lost a combat, they'll just take the hits. And so because they're immune to psychology, instead of having to take a leadership test -3, which in their case, their leadership is already 3, so they would have to roll 0. So they'd have to roll double ones, because a double 1 is an automatic pass when you're doing a leadership test. So they don't have to do that though, because they are immune to psychology. So instead, if something's immune to psychology and it loses combat, it takes extra wounds equal to how many it lost by. So since they lost by 3, they take 3 extra wounds. So it represents the Dark Elves really getting through, and since they're not willing to turn around and run, they take extra hits. So we take the 3 dice, and we gotta roll to see if they stop it with their armor. And only 1 of them got stopped. And so 2 more of the Tomb Kings dies from that combat. So the combat is over. 3 of the Dark Elf Corsairs died, and 8 of the Tomb King skeletons died. They are moved aside to the dead pile, because they are no longer going to participate in this fight. Unless there's a priest nearby who likes to resurrect more skeletons, which is actually one of the special rules of the Tomb Kings. But we're not doing that right now. So now it goes back to the Tomb King's turn. Now, because they only have the 1 squad, there's not really any choice of what they can do. They can't leave a combat. So they're going to sit there and they're going to fight again. So we're going to go back and do this combat. Now, just because it's a Tomb King's turn doesn't mean that they get to go first. The Dark Elves still have the higher initiative of 5, so they are going to attack first. So we have 5 guys in the front with 2 attacks each, except for the champion who has 3. So that is 11 attacks, and we have 2 supporting guys in the back. So we have 13 attacks in total. So let's roll. If they hit on 3s, oh, they missed a lot more this time, and then they wound the skeletons on 4s. Oh, that's a really bad roll. They only managed to hurt 2 skeletons. Now the skeletons have light armor and shield, so if they roll a 5+, they will stop the wounds. They didn't, and their shield can parry, so they can roll a 6, they will stop it. And they didn't. So 2 more Tomb Kings die. I will once again remove them, but keep them nearby to represent the fact that we have to resolve combat at the end. Now there are 10 skeletons in total, 5 in the front and 5 in the first supporting rank. They only have 1 attack each, so we have 10 attacks in total. They're going to hit the Dark Elves on 4+. And they didn't do so well either. And they're going to wound the Dark Elves on 4 pluses. Ooh, that's a little better. Now the Dark Elves only have light armor, so they only stop it on 6s. And they missed all 4 of them. So 4 of the Dark Elf Corsairs actually die. And so we remove everything that's not a standard bearer, musician, or the champion. And since that's all that's left, well, they're going to die next. Now we do combat resolution. Now here's something interesting. Looks like the Tomb Kings are in the lead. They got 4 points for killing 4 Dark Elves, plus 1 for their banner, so it's 5, plus 1 for the extra rank. So they actually have 6 points. The Dark Elves, on the other hand, have 2 points, plus 1 for the standard bearer. They no longer get the plus 1 for charging because they did not charge this turn. So they actually lost 6-3. So since they lost by 3, they have to make a leadership test and see if they run away. Now the Corsairs' leadership is 8, so 8 minus 3 is 5, so they have to roll 5 or less on 2 dice. Let's see if they succeed. They don't. So since they failed their leadership test, they are now going to turn around and run away. They're afraid of these skeletons. So in order to determine what happens next, we are going to roll to see how far these guys run, and we're going to roll to see how far these guys pursue. If they pursue farther than they run, they are going to overrun the stragglers and kill them off completely. And so we roll 2 dice for the Dark Elves. So they're going to turn around, directly around, and they're going to run the opposite direction. So they only run 5 inches. Now we're going to roll for the Tomb Kings. If they roll 5 or higher, they're going to catch the Dark Elves and they're going to kill them. And they roll a double 1. They don't know what to do, so they barely move at all. So we measure 5 inches. Now we actually do it from the back because that's where they really are. And then we measure 2 inches for the pursuing Tomb Kings. And so now the Dark Elves have turned around and they are running away. So now it is the Dark Elves' turn. Now the very first thing they have to do is see if their models continue to run. Because they have at least 25 or more than 25% of the remaining models, they can actually rally and turn around to fight some more. In order to do this, they have to make a leadership test. Now their leadership is 8, so we have to take 2 dice and roll 8 or less. So let's see if they rally. Okay, we roll a 5, so they manage to rally. Now when you rally, you can basically reform your units to face any direction you want. So we're going to turn them around, but they are not allowed to move or shoot because they're too busy just reforming and regrouping. So that is the end of the Dark Elf turn. They're not able to charge because they were too busy reforming. So now we go back to the Tomb King's turn, and they are obviously going to declare a charge and move 4 inches plus 2d6. Now 4 inches alone is enough to get there, so we're not even going to bother to roll to see if they make their charge. We're just going to charge them in. Now we go to the combat phase, and even though they're the ones that charged, they don't get to hit first. The Corsairs will hit first. So we take how many attacks? 2 for the standard bearer, 2 for the musician, and 3 for the champion. So we have 7 attacks in total. They're going to hit the skeletons on a 3+, which they do quite well. And then they're going to wound them on a 4+, which they don't do so well. Then the skeletons can stop the attacks on a 5+, which they do with one of them. And then the one that failed can try to stop it with his shield, which he does not. So 1 skeleton unfortunately goes down. Now the 9 remaining skeletons will get to attack back. The 5 in the front get their full attacks, which only happen to be 1 each. And then there's 4 supporting attacks. So there's 9 attacks in total. They're going to hit the Dark Elves on 4s, which they do pretty well. And they're going to wound them on 4s, which they also do pretty well. They manage to get 4 wounds through. So now these Dark Elves have to stop them with 6s. They rolled no 6s, so they suffer 4 casualties. Now there's only 3 of them left, so the 3 of them die. Now because they overran them, these skeletons can choose to do a few different things based on the circumstances, the leadership roles, and everything else that they can do. We're not going to go into exactly all those specifics. Just understand that they won the attack, so they're going to be able to move or reform or do a few different things. So that is the basic rules of Warhammer Fantasy. Now we didn't cover shooting or magic, and they are a very integral part of the game as well. But I just didn't want to take up all that extra time to try to get those in, because magic works a lot differently. Shooting is pretty simple, but it is an important part of the game. But understand that the basics of Warhammer Fantasy is all about these rank and file troops moving around, getting in formations, hitting the charges just right, because the charge can make a big difference, as you saw. The Dark Elves were able to get an extra wounds, even though they died in the end. In truth, the Tomb Kings were a little stronger than the Dark Elves, points-wise. So this isn't 100% balanced, although most of the games tend to be more balanced than this one. So if you're interested in starting Warhammer Fantasy, remember the things that you need are the rule book, an army book for your specific army, some dice, measuring tape, and of course people to play against. There are links below this video to all those resources for you so that you can get started right now and start enjoying the game of Warhammer Fantasy. This is Matthew from MiniWarGaming.com. Happy wargaming!